around the world and they come into the U.S. and they start a business. How do you do that? Here you are, but I don't have that. I don't know what you would describe it as, but that take chance attitude and just go for it.
Okay.
I would have the passion for a certain thing, but just the take chance thing is
It's a whole different
beyond me.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame.
They're like, so now he'll send us a note on our kids' birthdays, or Sue and I's birthday, and holidays, a little gesture in the holidays, and we go in there, and like Sue, she loves jewelry, so every time we go in there, now we get the family price.
Yeah.
I said it's still breaking the bank. So
I realize that like the more that people are established like that, usually the nicer they are and the more willing they are to like develop relationships and just be like kinder humans. They just seem like genuine people. Yeah. I'm excited for this today. Like I think it's so important because I think you have so much to offer and you have so much insight from 30 plus years of coaching, hundreds of athletes, the community, the soccer community that you've built, the lives that you've affected. You, like, in my mind, there are monumental coaches that have done the Bill Belichick's, the Phil Jacksons, guys who have dealt with huge personalities on the professional level. But again, they're professionals.
Right.
You've done that at the high school level with kids that are dealing with everything from lifestyle, the family, to egos. Like, before we even, like, this is a question I thought about later on, but like, how do you manage that? Like, where do you even start to develop community with that piece?
I didn't think about it when I was going to Cortland, but once things really started falling into place at Arlington, and it just kept going on and on and on, and each year you get a different group of guys with totally different personalities. My sub major was psychology.
Okay.
So I took psychology of sport, adolescent psychology, child psychology, sports psychology. I minored in it, and I must have taken close to a dozen psych courses.
Okay.
And that I would recommend, not necessarily to minor in it, but I would recommend that to any prospective person that wants to coach, is to get into some psych courses that relate to the dealing with individuals at whatever age. I think that turned out to be my strength, because to get guys to accept the role, trust each other, fall into place, and not have the jealousy over someone else. Because we faced, when you played and all the other guys played, we faced teams that definitely, in my mind, were better than us.
Yeah.
On paper, but we ended up winning. I think part of it was because we had no cancer in our rosters.
I think you were some of the best that I've ever seen, even looking at guys like Coach K and studying like some of these world-class coaches. Like, you are world-class at this. To be able to create a community of guys. I was always amazed, and this is one of the things that I look back as a player, is you were able to take guys that were on the bench and get them to buy in and say, hey, listen, like, we need you to be a part of this in order to win.
Yeah.
And guys that were starters, hey, listen, you guys need the guys on the bench to buy in case something does go on, and be prepared. And I feel like, especially at the higher level, that's gets lost because everyone goes, it's me, it's the me show.
Yeah.
And you created a team camaraderie piece. What else stands out in your mind for like how you went about doing that? Because like, again, it's a short season. So you don't have a ton of time to do that in high school soccer.
Well, it started to carry over once I was in longer and longer and longer, and kind of guys kind of knew where I was coming from for sure. But part of my understanding of that was the fact that I went to Arlington, graduated from Arlington, but didn't play soccer, just 1 year in JV. But basketball and baseball were my two traditional sports, because that's what my dad was into. And I was a reserve in both of those. So I understood what it was like to be not the stud out in the field to start the match or the game or whatever. When I got my opportunities, that was like a thrill to know that I'm getting my chance, I can show my stuff, but whatever. And the next game, I still may be back starting on the sideline again, but it was my complete understanding of what to be somebody on the side, waiting for their chance, waiting for their name to be called. Mont, I need you. And then all of a sudden, you're there. I think through different little chats amongst the team, I tried to relate that to the starters, that some of you guys have probably started on every soccer team you've played on since you were 5. You have no idea what to be that guy sitting on the side.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not an easy job. And I said, so when you come out, and it gets to a point where all the reserves get a chance to go in, I hope that you're focused and give them your full attention and support, because now they're getting an opportunity to do what you do all the time, and you take it for granted. And I really think they bought into that over the years.
As a player, I definitely did, because like I think that your understanding of that, and I kind of knew the background a little bit, but your empathy towards the players with that on both ends of the spectrum, I think is what created, at least for me, that piece. And also the ability to build confidence in players. Because like whether you were a starter or whether you were on the bench, like I think had a unique ability to create that confidence in players.
Yeah.
To get like, what made you want to go about it? Obviously, like you saw that where you kind of played with that, but like the confidence piece, did that ever play a role for you or a thought process?
A little bit. What a lot of coaches do, especially I see it in basketball more than anything else, is during training sessions, it's always the starters versus the reserves. And the starters will be running their offense and defense. I don't know in soccer whether we ever in our training sessions had first string guys in the scrimmage or our grid or whatever we were doing against the second string guys. I was always mixing you guys up.
Yeah, you were. I just realized that now. Yeah.
The reason was for that is because not to get that thing in the mind of a reserve or the starter that one's better than the other or one's worse than the other, but also to give the reserves a chance to bump you guys off for minutes. If somebody got lazy or was just not doing the job, and a reserve for 2 or 3 training sessions in a row looks superb, I was going to give them that chance because they were intermingled with you guys anyways.
Yeah.
So that was a key thing.
Like that. Now looking back at that, I didn't in college. Like I only had a short stint in college at Marist, right? But like it was starters versus the bench guys. Even at the higher levels, you see the same thing. So I wonder how many other coaches do that in order to create camaraderie. Like,
I have no idea. I don't think I ever talked about it at a clinic or anything like that. But that was one thing that stood out in my mind. And I think that goes back to me being in reserve. I didn't want to just play with the same guys that are sitting with me on the bench. I wanted to
play with everybody,
mingle in with everybody.
That makes sense. So take me back. How did you even get into coaching in the first place at Arlington?
Well, it happened at Cortland when, as a physical education major, it was physical education and health at the time, and then the health majors made a big step to say that they needed their own curriculum and degree.
Yeah.
But at the time, as a PE major, you needed at Cortland to play a varsity sport.
Oh, okay.
To get a credit, just for graduation credit.
Okay.
So not being able to do that, which a number of guys at Cortland that were in PE couldn't do it. They came from various high schools. I happened to bump into a guy in our dorm, and he said, hey, you have any interest in being a manager for soccer to get your credit? And I said, well, what's this going to entail? He says, well, I'm really looking for somebody that will go to away matches. You have to attend every training session. You got to be, of course, at every home match. It's not going to be the other managers that are kind of more the Gophers.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll do that. The first 2 years at Cortland, I was a manager for this, they called him Prof. Holloway. He'd been there for 35 to 40 years. And he was on his retirement downsizing. I had 2 years with him. Then this new young guy came in. I had 2 years with him. And I just got so enthused about it that I started, after each training session, I went home and I started my own notebook.
Okay.
So
do you still have the notebook?
I got papers all over the place, so I don't know.
But I always remember you had that paper in your back pocket.
Yeah,
right back in there, just pulling it out, taking the notes down.
So that's where the enthusiasm came from. And then as soon as I graduated and came back here to Poughkeepsie, bumped into somebody that said, hey, we need coaches in the town of LaGrange. At the time, it was town of LaGrange, town of Poughkeepsie, and town of East Fishkill. That was it.
Okay.
There were no other clubs yet, because we're talking mid-70s. Beekman not established, Pleasant Valley not established. None of the smaller towns were established. Nothing.
That's crazy.
So I ended up saying, yeah, I'll coach something. So they gave me a team. All they had is one league of 8 to 12-year-olds, co-ed. They didn't have enough boys or enough girls to have their own little intramural league.
Okay.
So I had the Myron Lumber, which is the
gold.
I had, I don't know if you remember any of these names. I had Fountains, Jimmy Grant, Land. These are all people older than you.
Yeah.
But all these people played, and I had this Rachel Goldstein. They all became varsity players with me at Arlington.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Myron Lumber, we ended up winning 2 or 3 championships with this little intramural team. And in fact, a lot of the other teams, like Carlacci played on one of the other teams. I don't remember Carlacci, my goalie.
No.
And I had the Fedor family, which was Scott, Paul, and Todd. They were on other teams in the little co-ed league. I can't even remember this McCaugheys. One was a goalie, one was a field player. There's like tons of them. That little LaGrange league, there were future Arlington varsity players coming through there. We hardly at that time had any mix of those players going over to play East Fishkill like a lot of you guys you did now and still currently do. They play with each other during the offseason, and then Jay and Arlington battle it out, or Ketchum and Arlington battle it out.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of that came from. And that's how I got interested in it. And then from right there, I just got into the USSF to take my my license courses, which I ended up going all the way to the C. But the B and A, the USSF was more of an organization. The professional organization was you needed to play when you went to get your license.
Yeah.
You were on the field like full time.
Okay.
And I struggled in the C big time. So the B and the A I knew I would never get. The NSCAA, which is now the United Soccer Coaches, USC, they was more of teaching you to teach the game, not the emphasis on you playing the game as much.
Okay.
There was a little overlap.
Yeah.
But so then I went to take my national diploma and advanced national diploma with them, which I got. But then they've got a premier now, and that it got to a point where, well, with the family and everything else, and I never did go for the last one. But in fact, they have something else now besides premier, which I think is like the U.S. staff at the under 21s and under 20s and so on.
I find certification so interesting, right? Because like sometimes almost like this curve, right? Like you get the certification a little bit, but you realize like you don't know everything.
Yeah.
But you still like can just go out there and coach and play. Like people that are scared to get started because they lack a certification, like any thoughts on that?
There is. Then the certification can be taken two ways. One, it can be taken, well, I got the certification, but did I really learn something and be able to take away and give back to the people I want to coach?
Yeah.
Or the certification could be where you've dove into it so deeply that you take it and you use it. It's beneficial for all your players.
Yeah.
But the other big thing was most of my assistants over the course of the entire career were former players. I really don't have an ego to where I would ask them, hey, I don't quite understand this. What are you doing here with the shielding and so on, with the use of the arms and the use of the body and the intricacies of the game?
Yeah.
But not being a player, that's where you kind of miss some of the stuff. Even if you go for your license, they're not necessarily giving you all the little intricacies.
Yeah, they're not going to pick up on that stuff.
So between all the way up to Sanborn, which was the last one, they were all former players. They would give me a little bit of the insight of different things that players need to where we could train them and so on.
I think one of the things as a player that I always appreciated was your ability to help us prepare for games and teams and fields and even situations, right? Like I was always really impressed with your level to have us be prepared. Even at the high school level, like you would do your research and say, hey, listen, and you played at this field a million times, White Plains, small bandbox field, we're going to shrink the field down for training because you guys are used to this huge field normally, which is 100 by 120, whatever.
Or 120 by 75.
Yeah, the Arlington field is huge. That level of preparation, I think, transcends and helps your coaches later on, and even us as players go, man, like this is what coaching is. When we look at how you prepared for some of those matches, walk me through kind of like your process with some of that beforehand.
Well, once you get into a career and you're coaching for years and years, and you're still in the same area, you kind of get to know the tendencies of each school, unless they have a new coach themselves. But I would after matches write down notes in the scorebook of just number one, undergraduate players that would be coming back.
Okay.
And number two, just the field situation, especially as the first few times I went to these fields in like the first 3 or 4 years of coaching. Each field was brand new. So I would just mark down different notes of their size. I would always, the first time I went to any field, I would always step it off to find out the length and the width.
Okay.
Just to make sure.
The details.
That the details. Yeah. And that would also give me the idea too of when they had their corner kicks, where I wanted our guy to make sure that he knew where 10 yards was and maybe cheat into it like 9 or 8.
Yeah.
So that we weren't back way too far or whatever, just little things like that. And part of that preparation was from a couple of coaching courses I took too at Cortland, where it was structured in a way where they mentioned about the smaller details of your different sports, whether it be baseball, the size of the field versus is your right field shorter, is it shorter to the fence than left field, and where to play players with regards to the depth on.
Yeah.
And soccer, basically the same thing. If it's a small field, they're going to try to crunch you in, and we're known for pinging the ball around. Do we have to change a little bit of our strategy? Not have so many passes in a build-up versus more of a quicker counterattack to get into some open space because the field's so small to begin with.
Yeah.
Same thing with Carmel. That always gave us fits in
That's
Carmel
such a
too.
small field. I hated that field.
So I had to prepare you guys for a different mindset of what we were used to in training, where I had all these small grids all the time and having you guys pinging the ball between each other and looking for just total possession, versus now on these smaller fields, once we gain possession, it's not so much as maintaining it with 5 or 6 passes, but we had to get going, and we had to see if we could break them down with 1 or 2 passes versus pulling them out of shape with 7 or 8 passes.
Yeah, it's a much different game.
Different. So that mindset with you guys was difficult too, because you were so used to, number one, what I was looking for in training, and number two, we were always on training on a field that was full size.
Yeah.
It made it difficult for Arlington to play against the Carmels and the White Plains, the Scarsdale, until the Scarsdale field was small too, if you remember. I don't know if you played away against Scarsdale, but that was a small field until now. They have themselves a beautiful field down there, but all the transition was difficult. If we played anybody in Yonkers in the playoffs, they were tiny fields.
New Rochelle, same thing.
It was back and forth.
It's so funny. So like you balance the technical coaching ability and like almost like the mindset, preparation, community piece. Like how do you balance those two? Like when you're looking at some of these matches, right? Like I'll use a White Plains, for example, just because it's a small field and it's a difficult team to play.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with players between the mindset, the buy-in, the camaraderie, and also the technical aspect of that?
I think part of it, which I don't really know if a lot of coaches have gone into the psych part of it, but the psych part of it in sports is huge, and that balance kind of came from the psychology aspect. So, for example, since you were mentioning White Plains, it was also a team that was overly Hispanic based, growing up with their nationality, and then watching games from Mexico. There's a tendency to dive and to
it's a different style of play.
A different style of play.
Yeah,
and not that it's wrong or not that it's illegal. That upsets many players of just traditional middle class whites. I think when they go to play a team like that, number one, on offense, they're very creative and they're very much huge dribblers, so they want to carry the ball a lot. And then defensively, they'll be hacking at your legs and going after parts of your body that you're not used to all that contact. Yeah. It really bothers a traditional player of our upper middle class Dutchess County type teams when we go to play White Plains, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, with the diversity they have on their teams. Yeah. That preparation had to be given to you guys, although it may be verbal because we don't really have a chance to train against that. It had to be at least brought about pretty strongly to have you be thinking about that line of play, that you're going to have to change a little bit of your mindset just going into the match.
So how would you go about doing some of that stuff?
It was more talk than anything else. I gave examples of what they were going to do with regards to the offensive part of the game and the defensive part of the game. And I said, listen, if you are somebody that is so technical with the ball and you're a tremendous dribbler, your team doesn't have possession, and then they finally win possession back kind of in front of their goal, what's going to be your tendency? And a lot of guys wouldn't be able to give the answer that player wants the ball so strongly because his major thing in his mind is that he wants to dribble that ball and play with it and beat 2 and 3 guys. So he's going to go back deeper and deeper and deeper into the field. And I said, that benefits us because now we've taken one of their best creative type players, and because he wants the ball so much, that he's now taking himself further and further away from his final object, which is to score a goal.
Do way more work.
So now I said, by the time he gets the ball at 70 yards away from our goal, he may beat the first couple of you guys, but we're now going to win the ball somewhere in the middle of the field and be able to counter them again. And I said, you have to be thinking about, that's not a place to foul because he's taken himself away from his main area that he's supposed to be getting to. And somewhere along the line, we're either going to make a great play defensively or he's going to make a mistake with the ball, and there we go.
Yeah.
So that's just one example to create in their mind a scenario of what's going to happen. So those are different things that all came from the notebook, where I'd have a notebook on basically each team to say, here's what I've seen in the past. They should probably show similar things, and you guys need to be prepared for it.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you have a system in place to have those notes and to take them and to review them and the time to prep for the season. When would you start prepping for the next season?
Not really that much before, because like you guys, I always thought you guys needed a break, not only physically, but mentally. And I was concerned about some of you guys that were playing full year and even in the summer, not even taking a break. So now you're going to get to August training sessions where we wanted you to be in it with total passion and energy. And mentally, you're a little bit drained because you haven't taken that break.
Yeah.
So the only thing I did in the off season, right 2 or 3 weeks after the season was done, I'd sit down for a half an hour, maybe an hour, and I'd write down on 2 sheets of paper, 1 sheet of paper, what did I do well this year coaching, and what did I not do so well this year coaching. So, for example, maybe I wasn't satisfied with what I did with corner kicks this year.
Okay.
With the roster that we had, or maybe I wasn't satisfied with, or maybe I was totally satisfied with my subbing rank order, and we got a lot of production out of guys with who we continually replaced that maybe the 30-minute mark or the 25-minute mark, and the production from that type of substitution came out really good. So maybe that was in my plus column. So each year was going to be different because, of course, we have new personnel coming in.
Yeah.
With being a public school, you graduate some and you come in with others. But at least in that evaluation of myself, I had notes to prepare for the next season as to, all right, this worked out really good last year with that roster. This didn't work out so well. Now we can start off with this, and then we may have to tweak it one way or another, depending upon who our final selection of 24, 25 are.
Yeah.
And go from there. And then after that, basically, as far as Arlington is concerned, my mind was taking a break, a vacation.
Okay.
Because I was doing ODP, I was doing academies with Kieran. Once Kieran and I really got going, then we were running the thing at Gold's.
Yep.
The New York Soccer Academy at Gold's.
Yep.
So that was all, in my mind, that was all recreational as far as me learning a little bit more by working with different coaches in these academies and just continuing to strengthen my base. But it didn't have, I was still taking a vacation from Arlington soccer.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a real blend.
It's a blend, but at the same time, like separation. Because
It was a whole different animal.
whole different.
I had, when you're doing, for the most part, Kieran and I and a couple other people that I work with closely, well, in ODP, if I wasn't doing ODP or I wasn't doing the East Hudson Academy with a team with Kieran, the tactical part in my mind was gone.
Okay.
All I was doing is just technical ball work with the kids and having fun with it.
Yeah.
So really, that was a mental break right there.
Yeah.
So there was no real tactical strategy that I was needed to concentrate on when I was working with all these young people, unless it was one of those special teams.
Yeah.
And then you had that blend again, but it still wasn't Arlington, and that was kind of in sleep mode.
Yeah. Well, I always enjoyed too the fact that you would run some of those kids' clinics, and I attended as a kid, and like some of the varsity players would come down, and you'd still coach. It was indoors.
Yeah.
You have those big ball, they look like tennis balls.
Yeah.
I don't know, they don't still play with those anymore, right? Like it was a lot of fun to like spend some of that time, and Coach Mont from the high school team was there, and you get to learn from one of the best. How do you feel about the pay to play now versus where it was back in the day? Before we go into that though, I want to talk, like, were you always organized with your notes in terms of like with the detail to like previous season, the other season, like, or was this like a system that you developed over time?
Well, as far as soccer is concerned, over time, because not being experienced as a player for any length of time whatsoever, so I felt I really needed to have these notes to continue to build upon. And that's why I continued to go to these different classes. I went to the national convention every year while I was coaching.
So always learning.
So always learning. And then my philosophy was, if any coach feels as though they know that everything they need to know in that sport, it's time to get out, because that's when they're going to do a disservice to their players. Because at any point in time, I could pick up something, even if it's the smallest detail, pick up something new that I hadn't even realized before or hadn't come across before. And then that's still learning.
Yeah, 100%.
But I was always a sports nut right from a youth age, and got involved in playing all kinds of things. And then that was the day and age back in the dark ages where you'd come home from school and 6, 8 guys would go out and we'd find a blank space and we'd play, whether it be touch football, basketball, whatever. You just did it on your own. Now
you come back when it's dark out, right? You come back when it's dark.
Every young child in today's world, I think, has to be supervised to get into an organized. It's not that situation where I think you probably see it more in South American countries and maybe over in Europe, where they go out and play. They just play.
Yeah.
And if somebody hacks somebody else, they may have an argument for 5 minutes, and the next thing they're back playing and everything's good again.
Yeah.
But that's where the young people really learn. Versus look at even maybe some of your teammates that would just moan and groan about a call that wasn't made, or that somebody hacked them. They didn't get penalized for it, and they couldn't handle that. And part of that comes from not being on a disorganized playground, where it's what I call just disorganized chaos.
Yeah.
But that's where you really learn.
Yeah.
To hold your own. Like we used to go over. I lived over near Titusville Elementary School. So at the time, we'd ride our bikes over to Red Oaks Mill, because they had the basketball courts there.
Yep.
And they had lights at the time, and we'd be playing until who knows when. But you could get reamed by some guy, and you dealt with it.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to call a foul, and the only fouls that anybody was ever calling was somebody where it was almost drawing blood.
Yeah.
So otherwise, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
So you learn from that more than you learn from the totally structured sessions where you're under the guidance of adults or whatever.
I feel like part of it too is like having siblings, whether it's older or younger, that are part of that drag you through the mud a little bit. I can give my sister a shout out with that. Like we drug her through everything. She's a tough little cookie, man. So I think that the siblings might have a part to do with that too. Where do you think like the pay to play fits in now? Like, do you think it's a good thing for youth sports? Like you've been around it long enough to like have seen it developed over time from the 2 to 3 leagues or teams in East Fishkill and the Arlington area over to this massive piece where there's a lot of people paying to play.
Well, I think there's a number of things that go along with that. When I started in LaGrange at a small little intramural team, and probably for the first 15 years of my career, I coached for no pay. All these outside teams when the towns, not just intramural anymore, but town travel teams won. So now that has gone totally the opposite way to where coaches are being paid big time money. And in my experience with ODP, I would never say anything when I was doing it because I wanted to be involved. But I was looking at some of the other teams because they had 3 or 4 age groups at the night that the ODP was being held.
Yeah.
And I'd look over some of those fields and all they're doing is scrimmaging. But these coaches are raking in the money, but there was no preparation for those kids. Yeah. And I worked with this guy from Middletown that he was coach in Middletown after the longtime coach left. And he was under that same mindset that I was on as far as, hey, if we're going to train these kids, we got to put them in the grids. We got to do small little exercises. So the coach from the year above us or the year below us would come over 15 minutes into the training session. Hey, you want to scrimmage? Maybe for the last 15 minutes, but right now we're busy.
We got work to do.
We got stuff to do. Yeah. And then now you look at the families. You have a family of 2 or 3 siblings, and they all want to play, and you got to put out all this money. We're missing so many kids that have the potential to be outstanding players, whether it be at the high school level, the collegiate ranks, or on our national program. We're missing them because these people don't have the money to be paying for this stuff. And I don't like to pay for play because, number one, I think some of the coaches are taking the pay but not doing the service to the kids. And number two, we're missing huge amounts of kids that their parents cannot, and whether there's scholarship money or not, it's not paying for the full amount. So just then the other aspect of that comes, then the third aspect of that comes with the parents. So if I'm putting money down for my child to play, he better be playing.
Yeah.
And if he's not playing, then I'm going to start raising Cain with the coach. That mindset of a parent to be more demanding of what they want to have done with their son or daughter, that happens to now transfer over to the schools where it's not pay to play, it's make it on your own merit and then play the minutes on your own merit. And that's where a lot of these coaches can't take it anymore because the parents are going to the ADs, they're going to the administrators up above the ADs, and they're saying, this guy's no good. I don't want him in here anymore.
Well, and it's hard too because their livelihood is tied to this coaching position. And if someone lodges a formal complaint, it goes against your mark as a teacher. Yeah. And those should be 2 different things. At least like I was very fortunate. Like when I even just coaching B, like you can lodge a complaint against me all you want. My job is not tied to this. I'm doing this because I love to coach the Arlington program. Yeah. I think that's super important. But so any advice for coaches that are trying to battle with that of like, how do you balance those two? Because like, not that Arlington's a political program at all, and you were able to make that very clear cut. But like some of these young coaches, and even coaches that are a little bit older, are dealing with this where my son plays for someone, they're a great player, and they walk in this program, they get their ass kicked, and they should be either cut or sitting on the bench, and their parent is demanding that they play. How do you handle that?
Well, in a coach that is in the same situation as Arlington or Jay or Ketchum, where kids are coming in from an off-season where they're on all different teams, and they may be a starter on that team, and now they're coming in to tryouts for their school team. It has to be explicitly known to the players that this is a blank chalkboard now. I don't care what you did with your team in Seoul Academy and where he had you playing, but this is now a new group of guys that I'm trying to mold into a group that is cohesive, can be dynamic. It's going to be based on no political, I didn't see you and I didn't coach you in the off season. This is based upon our insight of myself and the rest of the staff. You've got to try to take that to the best of your ability and accept what our decisions are going to be. Right or wrong, our decisions may not always 100% be correct. A few times that we thought we made a mistake and a parent would come in and complain that somebody's on varsity A or varsity B or JVA versus being on varsity. We didn't coddle them with fake answers, but we did say, well, maybe in your opinion we did make a mistake, but this is what we saw over those 5 days, and we're going to go with what we saw. And the biggest thing for young coaches is they got to get a relationship with their AD, who is kind of their boss. this is my philosophy. This is the way I'd like to run a tryout. Is there anything from what I've said that you would like to tweak before something occurs? Because if there's no communication between those, then all of a sudden the parent goes to the AD, and the AD has no idea what that young coach is doing, unless he's very active and being out in the field. So then that's when you run into a little bit of the AD saying, well, maybe the AD calls me in and says, what's the deal with this? Maybe this kid. And that's where it causes a lot of friction.
Yeah.
So fortunately, because of success and because of no real complaints at the beginning, I had complete backing from the AD and from the administration all the time.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times problems never got to me. They were taken care of there with the parent, and it never even got to the point where I had to deal with it. That's where I was very fortunate, but that came from down the road experience and success on. Well, young coaches don't have that in their repertoire yet.
Yeah.
So they have to, I think their biggest thing is to communicate with the AD, explain to them how they like to do tryouts, what they're looking for, really give the AD an idea of where they're coming from.
So funny because like now that you say that, like it didn't jump out at me until you said it, but like the communication for you, whether it's coach to athlete or coach to AD, like that piece is massive in order to build trust, in order to build camaraderie, in order to build a buy-in with that team. It's massive. And as much as you can be a fantastic coach and have all the soccer knowledge in the world, or coach in general, any sport, if you're not willing to communicate and have some empathy off of the bench with those players, man, does it make for a difficult season.
I can't stress enough to coaches about communication with their players. So they, in fact, here's an example of a really thing that never really hit me, and until it happened at Cape. For all the years at Arlington, nobody ever said anything to me. But it happened at Cape. The first year at Cape, when they really bought into me and I bought into them, and they knew that I had their backs. A new guy coming in from another state. Towards the end of the season, one guy says to me, he says, Mont, he says, how come when you talk to us, you're kneeling down? I said, because if I'm standing up, looking over at you guys as though I'm bigger than you. I said, I'm kneeling down because now I'm eye to eye with you, because you and I are on the same level. I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. We're equals here. I may be your coach in title, but I'm not better than you, so I want to look straight in your eyes, because I don't want to stand over somebody. And I never thought about that at Arlington because nobody ever asked me, but that was my deal, is that I was on their level, and I wanted them to know that. And communication-wise, I don't think there's enough communication between a coach and a player. A lot of times I would ask you guys for your opinion on whether we were doing something right with corners or whether something needed to be done differently, because I remember many times saying to you guys have played this game for 10 years already. I said, you're 16, you probably started at 5 and 6. You've been playing for 10 years. Let me hear some of your thoughts. And that openness, that empowers a player to say, this is fantastic. He's letting me have a couple of words here as to what I feel or what I think.
Well, it allows us to solve the problem so that we take ownership of that piece. Because, like, again, as a coach on the side, there's only so much you can do. Soccer is one of those unique sports where there's no timeouts, there's no stop plays. Like, it is, once you have 5 to 10 minutes to give us what we need in order to make us better for the second half. And that was one of the unique things that people always like, what the hell do you tell these boys at halftime, where they come out and they're ready to, like, we might be asleep for the first half. How, like, you got known for that piece.
Well, I got kidded by my fellow coaches would say, what the heck did you have in your good book now that you were preaching?
They knew about the book, huh?
But I think they were talking about the Bible when they said good book.
Yeah.
What are you preaching to these guys at halftime? That was from the notes. I didn't waste any of the minutes. It was specifically of what I saw that I could relate to you in those 10 minutes, so that possibly you could make the corrections. The part of letting the kids have some power to express themselves, I think, was especially during training sessions. That would be an important thing, because then if I indeed felt as though I was pushing something too hard or maybe not enough, we could correct it there versus that short 10 minutes. But I learned a long time ago, soccer is a problem-solving game because you don't have those stoppages.
Yeah. In
basketball, you got multiple timeouts, substitutions every 15 seconds, it seems like. Football, you got guys coming in, giving the plays on. In soccer, it's problem solving to where there's not much that I could do once the match started except for a sub. Otherwise, the only other time that I had a chance to even say anything was your 10 minutes that you're talking about. So if you weren't prepared to solve problems prior to the match of what we thought the other team was going to bring to the table, then I didn't prepare you guys. And that's where all this preparation and note stuff came from, is the fact that the game actually is a problem-solving game to where, okay, they're high pressing us. How are we breaking that? Or they're playing low pressure and they're giving us the first 50 yards of the field. How are we going to pull them out and be able to find space in behind those defenders to get our opportunities? Those preparations had to be done prior to every match.
Well, and it's so funny because like back at the beginning of this, you said like entrepreneurship is a whole different piece, but in reality, it's not. My job is just to solve a problem, and I just happen to do it way more often. But like because we were able to learn those problems and have to solve them on the field without any sort of oversight, like, hey, you're captain of the field, you need to do this while you're out there. Figure it out. I'll yell at you from sideline a little bit, but you gentlemen have to communicate and figure it out. I feel like it set me up to solve problems outside of the field that at multiple different levels. Entrepreneurship is right up your alley, Mont.
Yeah,
you'll be good to go.
Yeah,
solving problems.
Well, you think about it. Basically, if you guys are prepared as much as possible before the match starts with being able to solve problems that are thrown at you from the other team that maybe we didn't figure on, you're really an extension of myself during that first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're doing it on your own, unless I feel with Craig or whatever staff I had at the time, maybe we have to throw somebody else in, have this guy talk to this guy about what we're seeing and what he's not seeing, and then we'll reinsert him when we're ready. We went to there, and I think as far as substitutions, with going way back to knowing your roles, pretty much I think you probably felt this and maybe observed it also, that we hardly ever changed out defenders.
Yep.
Defenders were. If we found or we felt in our hearts and minds that we had 4 defenders that we knew could do the job consistently and with total effectiveness, they weren't coming out of the match. Most of our substitutions were done with outside, with our strikers, maybe once in a while, depending upon the formation we were playing, maybe one of the central midfielders. But that's where our substitutions were with regards to trying to utilize the reserves and keep them in the match and keep them engaged as a player with our team,
yeah,
and focused, and not have the cancer begin or the jealousy on. But the defenders, unless you were pretty much the guys that were there.
Well, and that confidence piece, knowing that we had that back, and it was like, hey, like this is ours to lose.
Yeah,
I think goes a really long way with building confidence within players, so that they tend to take ownership of that piece. Like, hey, this is our back four. Like, let's control this thing. This is our keeper. Like, we need to make sure we communicate, we keep it together, and do what we need to do to keep everybody on the same page.
And there were some times, you probably remember a couple, I would imagine that it happened every season, but there were a couple of times at halftime, we would say to one of the starters, this was a little bit subpar for you right now in the first 40. So-and-so's going to jump in to start the second half. And just by doing that, the reserves are saying to themselves, wow, his lineup is not in concrete.
Yeah.
He's got a lineup here that's like Jell-O. It can be replaced. If he sees something, he's going to give us a shot. You know, there were times where we would have 1 or 2 guys that were reserves for the first 40, start off the second half, because as politely as we could say, this was not a good performance by you. It's a little subpar. We're going to give you 15 minutes or so to watch a little bit more of the action to see what we're talking about, and you'll get reinserted.
And I think that like that level of communication where you're like, hey, listen, this is what we're saying. This is what you need to observe and fix. And then like, I'm going to give somebody else a chance. It ties in so beautifully, so many different pieces of the communication to get an athlete to great buy-in. I hope the people at home are taking note of this piece, because like you just got a master class on how to break it down to an athlete while still keeping them on your team. Because that's a really hard thing to do, to tell somebody that, hey, listen, you're fucking it up right now. And it's especially on like the edge of a match where it's really tight. You have the composure as a coach to create that buy-in for a player to help everybody build confidence to get what you need and help everybody win later on in the match.
You think about it, Arlington's so big that we had basically a roster of 25 every year.
Yeah.
And so you got 25 egos you got to satisfy. And I realized that. Knowing, well, first, the biggest problem is realizing that you have 25 egos. And then secondly, how do I satisfy 25 egos and get them,
that's the problem.
get them to accept certain roles and certain things that will become very valuable to the team as the season goes on. Whether it be a 10-minute stint here to where you're just relieving somebody, or whether it be more of a 25-minute stint because you're just on the cusp of what that first 11 brings to the table. So you're going to get a lot of minutes. It just may be in different times.
I think one of the things too that you always really helped our team with was the fact that you helped us be present, which I know a lot of people nowadays struggle with. And what I want you to do is kind of take us through the journey of a season, right? You look at the season and you would break it down for us as to different goals and what we're trying to get through within that piece in order to get the ultimate goal of winning a state title. But at least nowadays, people have a really hard time with being present. And how would you break that down for us? You've done it 30 plus times, right?
Yeah.
How would you break that down for people that haven't done that before?
Well, I think I tried to remind you guys all the time that the ultimate goals have to be as far back in your mind as possible. The initial goal to start off with is individually for you as a player, your goal would be to get as many minutes as you can on the field. But then as a team, the first individual goal would be to, in these non-league games, which you usually started off with, pretty much, is to be able to see if we can transition ourselves from last year into a cohesive group that plays together, plays hard, plays organized and disciplined, see what we can accomplish with regards to coming out with a couple of W's at the beginning of the year, gaining some confidence, gaining a little swagger, and seeing what happens from there. And then, of course, we kept your mindset in the fact that your first and only goal is the league championship. Can we win the league? If there was a bump in the road during that process of the league, which there were a few times where we didn't win the league, the goal then switches to, okay, we can't quite establish the league championship title, but by winning out for the rest of the season, we can then establish a better placement in the sectional play, which will become your next goal. It just went step by step, with trying not to let you guys get too far ahead, because the success of the program, you guys were always thinking Final Four, possible state title, etc., and that's getting too far ahead as far as just basic organization itself. And it throws our ability to train you guys correctly, because you're looking way beyond what's in front of you.
Well, and again, outside of the field, people talk about the process now, right? Like, but you literally laid out the process for us. Hey, we got a match tomorrow with X team. Like, you need to focus on this one match. Like, this is where your focus goes to. Yeah. Worry about the next team when we're done. And so I think so many people look past the easy wins that the games that you should really win, then they lose them because they're too far down the road.
And that came from like when you're saying when we talked about the field sizes of the different schools. When we went to play at Carmel, maybe we're 7-0 and they're 3-3 or 3-4 or whatever it may be. The guys are thinking, "Oh, this is going to be an easy one." But I knew from the fact that because of the environmental situation that it wasn't going to be easy. And sometimes I may not have done it during your playtime, but sometimes I brought scores from Arlington versus Carmel at their field from past years to just emphasize, here's what happened to us back X amount of years ago because of the situation where you guys were too overconfident, that because you have the more technical ability, and we all know that. So that's a given. But given that you have the technical ability now, but tactically, there's a whole different frame of mind that comes into play because of this field. So now, can you combine these together and still come out with a win, or are you going to get upset and Carmel's going to have a beautiful night by celebrating the fact that they beat Arlington?
Yeah.
So that's keeping guys in the present versus thinking, like, okay, after Carmel, who do we have? Oh man, we've got Ketchum, and then we're all talking about Ketchum.
Yeah. When you look at all the teams that you've coached at a bird's eye view, what do some of the best teams have in common that you've coached? And that could be from a camaraderie perspective, that could be from a winning perspective, however you want to define that. What do the best teams, probably define best, right? But like, what do the best teams in your eyes have in common?
I think I could take, of the 35 seasons with Arlington, I could almost take every one of those teams. And the biggest thing that I think differentiates us from all the other schools is the camaraderie amongst the guys that we had over the years. In today's day and age, I'd be fired. Because,
oh, really? Why? Why do you say that?
Because I don't know if you were part of this deal, but
the
boxing match.
Oh, we got some stories on that.
I would be canned. I would be gone. But the people on the outside that would want me gone because of doing something like that, which they would consider that to be what do they call it when you go to college and you want to join hazing?
Yeah.
They would consider that in a hazing.
That's unfortunate.
But what that did was that brought you guys as tight as glue together.
Pasta parties,
because it was just, we ate together And then we go downstairs and we acted like crazy men together.
Oh, man.
The intersecting of guys was just tremendous.
What was the best boxing match you ever saw?
It was who the heck? It was Conor Lander against Shavako.
Oh, man. And that was the state championship team.
Yeah, two beasts.
Yeah.
Going against it. I was a little concerned, but it was just 30 seconds and then we ended it. But that ability to have guys together in that way, whether it be breaking bread together or whether it be something along the lines of that, which is a little outrageous in a lot of people's minds in today's age. But as far as I was concerned, it was really no harm to anyone. It was what was really happening was guys were not only getting to know each other, but they were learning how to really respect each other, have each other's back now in any type of.
And it also gave us a way to, like, if there was any sort of like shit going on, like, hey, let's settle this thing, and when you're done, you're all friends.
Yeah.
We got a game to win tomorrow.
Yeah.
So again, like you said, it brings everybody closer. So camaraderie is the big thing that stood out for you.
Yeah, that was. I just can't remember. I remember sitting in the chair on the sidelines, and I remember hearing players from other teams on the bench making really bad remarks because they weren't playing or somebody else just screwed up on the field and either allowed a goal or committed a horrendous foul that gave us a free kick or that. And that I just never heard that on our sidelines, knowing that you guys were so tight with each other. And I'm sitting on the side as a reserve, but I'm rooting for you to play your best game rather than looking for you to make a couple mistakes so I possibly could go in.
Yeah.
I think that was the whole difference right there, is that the players on the side weren't looking for the starters to be playing terribly so they could get in. They were just hoping that their name was going to be called either by us gaining a couple goal advantage on the other team or by the coaching staff seeing something different that we needed done tactically and we needed them.
Yeah.
Versus the guy.
I mean, I always remember if I was playing, like, hey, let's get a couple goals. So guys that aren't normally playing, let's get them in the game a little bit. Let's get them some play time today. And this way everyone gets in the match. Again, like, it helps with, there's no reason for us to sit there and play against a team that we should be getting some rest against and not letting everybody get some play time in minutes. And you made that clear.
Yeah. And intentionally, I don't know whether you guys really realize, but intentionally at the beginning of the season, for probably the first 8 to 10 games, I would try to get, my goal as a coach was to get 20 deep in the substitutions in the game, to get at least 20 deep, to see what guys could really do. So then as we came down to the final push of the season and into the postseason tournament, in our minds as a staff, we had really the idea of, all right, what's our best 11, 12, 13, 14? That will probably be the ones that carry us through as far as we can get to.
Yeah.
But that, if that wasn't established at the beginning by us allowing that substitutions to get high numbers in the first number of games, we don't really know what Joe X could actually do when he's thrown into the fire.
Yeah. Just
on a moment's notice.
And he probably doesn't have the confidence or the practice doing it.
Right.
Right? Like, it takes repetition to come off the bench cold 35, 70 minutes in the middle of October and expect you to perform at a peak level.
Yeah. I think some guys might have thought that we were going so deep in substitutions at the beginning of the season because we weren't sure about your fitness. But it was more to do with confidence. Can they handle the fire? Will they be the one that we look to as we get down to the ender part of the season?
Yeah.
That's what it was all about.
It's a really good way to go about it.
Yeah.
What was your biggest surprise as a coach?
Just having the success that I had with the teams that came in each year. I had no insight as to what would transpire over the career at Arlington.
Yeah.
That just blows me away when I think about it.
It's incredible.
Because there's a lot of guys out there, there's a lot of good coaches out there. They just either don't have the fortunate situation of a team being able to attain that, having the people on the outside recognize what a great job he's doing, even though they're not winning.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of really good coaches out there that aren't attaining the success with W's and L's or championship titles, but are really doing a great job with young people. But that's the biggest thing.
Where did you draw the line, or where did you balance between helping students and student athletes become better people and winning? Like, how did you did you separate those two? How did you go about that piece? Like, what was the focus on for you?
No, I thought it was integral with just making remarks of, especially when I was talking to you guys about in today's language with young people, the F-bomb flies without them even knowing that they're using it.
Yeah.
And in soccer, supposedly it should be a penalty. Once, if the referee hears that being flown, it's at least a yellow card. And just that alone, I said, does that transfer to you being looked at as a a superb individual because you're always flying that word, either in a situation where somebody may have deserved it or whether you're just throwing it out there for no reason. And I said, if you take yourself off the field before we want to actually sub you, you've just done a real disservice to yourself, and you're going to end up sitting there for a long time because we didn't take you off the field. You took yourself off.
Yeah.
So there has to be self-control, and you have to have that self-control and your ability to handle the ups and downs of an athletic match. And there's going to be peaks and valleys in every game that you play.
Yeah,
you
that's
have
for
to,
sure.
You have to not get too overly excited and overconfident in the peaks. And in the valleys, you have to learn to be able to fight out of that valley in a way that is not going to take you completely out of the game, to where your mind all of a sudden, we may have 11 players out there, but who I've just gone off the wall by yelling and screaming at the referee, but not even getting carded, so I'm still on the field. Now you guys are playing with 10 because I've taken myself out of the game.
Yeah.
My mind is somewhere else. I may be individually as a human standing on the field, but we're really playing with 10 because I've just taken myself mentally totally
out of the field and out of the game. When you look back, it was 35 years of coaching. When you look back,
just at Arlington, then when I did something stupid and started coaching down in Delaware.
That's not stupid.
Now we're talking 40 something.
When you look back, what is your fondest memory? Like, what puts a smile on your face? If you could share and just help us relive one of those moments, like what moment is that?
Well, probably it would have to be one of the teams that attained the ultimate prize, the state championship. And of the three that did and the two that lost, I would think that the 206 team that ended up being undefeated, winning it all against Brentwood, no less, might have been the biggest one with regards to surprise and total accomplishment, because I don't really think, except for Skonechny, who was our keeper,
Yep.
I don't really think there was that, in quotes, that ultimate star that could carry that team along. It was that entire group of guys individually. They were able to take their individual talent that they had that worked the best for them and utilize it to all of us attaining that goal. That team would have never, I don't think even opposing coaches would ever have thought that team could go undefeated, also win it all, if looking at the roster and knowing them from the year before when they played against us.
100%.
Just they were just good athletes, but super people that there wasn't an ego on that team whatsoever that even had to be dealt with during the team.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I can just remember almost each one of those guys, and it was just so easy to coach them. And I tried to have fun with almost every group, and that's why some of the guys, like when I see Beckley every once in a while, and a couple of these other guys, he says, between middle school, Mont, and between coaching, he said, sometimes I never knew when you were serious and when you weren't serious, because you were just always in a lightest frame of mind with us.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to play for you because you were just there. You were like almost one of us, but yet you still had the title of coach.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I think that's really cool.
It's really cool. You had fun along the way, and I'm super grateful for all the time that you've spent with me and that I've learned from you. And to carry it forward, I can't thank you enough.
When you love something as much as I did, and it's never considered a job in the first place.
Yeah.
And you wake up and you're looking forward to seeing what happens that particular day, and then the next day will be the same thing.
Yeah.
And that benefits everybody. So
awesome. Mont, thank you.
Yeah.